they're never sexy, but they won.
Sometimes we have to eat our crow. And I got to eat my crow this week, okay?
Doom alert. Yeah, we're back at Heartbreak Hotel and we're checking back in.
What's up, everybody? SJG here with Chris Ferguson, D2 K-Ferg. We got a little treat for you guys. Got a little treat before we start the show. We want to send a shout out to one of our favorite followers of the show, Mr. Clarence of Breaking Down the Bulldogs. We want to give him some screen time. I know he's been working, so he hasn't been able to catch up. So we want to make sure he feels the love and gets some screen time here.
I don't think you hear the sound.
You guys can't hear it. You can't hear it.
Not from the video.
All right. Technical difficulties, guys. Our producers not in, so I'm kind of carrying both loads today. But yeah, let's see. You guys aren't seeing it, so no worries. We'll definitely make sure that we'll definitely make sure that he gets his due shortly. But in between times, yeah, Chris, what's going on with you, man? How are you doing today?
Doing all right. It's just a midweek slog, trying to get through it. It's, as people know, fourth quarter, it's a lot going on. So just trying to make it through it. And, the weekends and football is that escape.
Yeah, man. Well, look, man. Fourth quarter for you, fourth quarter in the business world, but we're only at the halfway point. And I say only, but I mean, wow, actually already at the halfway point of the D2 HBCU football season. We are okay. What? Help me out, Chris. What week are we going into? Because I know
we're going into week 5, even though some teams have played 5 teams already, but we're going into week 5.
Right. So yeah, a lot of action already. Please, everybody, make sure that you guys hit the like button wherever you are so that it gets out to as many people as you can. This is the show where we talk about D2 HBCU football, and for us, that includes the CIAA as well as the SIC. I guess we do, and we can also make sure we include, we hadn't prepared for this, but the brethren over at West Virginia State, even though, they don't like to come over and play other teams at the CIAA. They're doing all right. We might talk about them a little bit later. Let us know if there's any West Virginia State people in the chat. Yeah, CIAA, SIC. So let's take a look at what happened last week. Let us know in the chat. I know last week we got some folks saying that their HD2 HBCUs weren't being mentioned. Look, guys, so the way that we do this, we try to produce this out for about an hour-long show. Try to take a look at what happened last week and also make sure that we preview for what's going to come up for the next week. So there are certain teams that, either are doing very well, they have fan bases that are sizable or interact with us. So we definitely want to make sure that we touch everybody that we can. So let's see. Blue Jacket for Life says her Teddy Keaton basically says Savannah State runs a gimmick offense. That doesn't make sense last night. Yeah. Well, shout out to you for checking out the Teddy Keaton show, which is on the HBCU Game Day Family. It is hosted by our guy Sly, the sports guy. And yeah, he did use those words, I believe, gimmick offense. But he puts everything in context. He's a very animated guy. He started off the season, his team was ranked number 4 in Dr. Gavelle's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab poll. And yes, they did, Sheena. They did, and we will definitely talk about that. Inside the HBCU Sports Lab poll, they were ranked number 4. And coming into his first year, he said that they were rat poison. So if he would say that his team being ranked so high early on is rat poison, what's he gonna say about anybody else's teams? He keeps it very real. But no greater cue than to start off for talking about last week then. Clark Atlanta Lane College, right? So again, Clark Atlanta comes in. They're coming into the game unbeaten. They do have to tie the Florida Memorial due to weather a couple weeks back. But they're coming in unbeaten, taking on a Lane College team that has played better this year. And we see that the game was close. And, actually, Clark Atlanta went into halftime down in Memphis, where I believe the game was taking place. They went down heading into the fourth quarter. But wouldn't you know it, of course, by now we know Teddy Keaton and his quarterback, Mr. Wright. I just think they just like making things more interesting, right? Because they come away with a sizable 10-point, 38-28 win. Chris, what are the thoughts in the greater D2 world about Clark Atlanta? We know the SIC has not had the most sterling start to the season, taking the straight up beating to the to the CIAA, as well as having struggling against other conferences as well. Just kind of talk about Clark Atlanta and what the view is on them, as far as the entire D2 landscape.
Well, it's been pretty muted, to say the least. I would, when you look at the SIEC and how they sort of performed out of conference, that's been kind of the saving grace in terms of conversation is the way Clark Atlanta has played. But, in the grand scheme, David Wright kind of cooled off a little bit. And then they went to Bethune-Cookman and came back and beat them. And that really stoked a little bit more conversation. Man, if you're kind of on the outside looking in, you probably would want to see a little bit more of a separation between Clark and some of the rest of the schools that they're playing. Lane was really interesting because they actually have some playmakers. You talk about like Anthony Evelyn, the wide receiver, Cal Dewey, the running back. They got some skill players that are pretty good. The only thing that really stood out in this game was the way that Lane just ran out of gas in the second half. They didn't score. And when that happens, you got to play, somebody like Clark Atlanta that is going to have some horsepower behind them. You allow a team like that to come back in the game, and they're basically ready to deliver the knockout punch, and that's exactly what Clark did. So it's great to see Clark, continuing to win and kind of carry the torch for the SIAC. But, the problem is you keep playing with fire like that, playing with your food in the first half of games, and you get behind, you may end up in a game where you can't get back. And that's not good. And so, I would certainly like to see Clark to, put their foot on the accelerator earlier in games and just, go ahead and not play down to the competition if they truly are a step above the rest. So,
Yeah, no doubt
and I
about it.
agree. Like this comment in here about Clark's defense has to play better. I totally agree with that. That still tends to be a little bit of a liability for them, and they've got to do a little better. But hey, it's year one, right? I mean, that's the thing here. It's just the first year, and you would think that with Teddy Keaton going in, into the offseason later on and being able to address some of those needs or get some of those guys get more experience, that's going to really help next year. But by all means, they're ahead of schedule, and that bodes really well for them. Maybe not so much the rest of the conference, but very curious to see how things turn out second half of the year for them.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Then you had a Sunday game, another Sunday game, and who knew? Who knew Tuskegee? All that they needed was to play on Saturday. On Sunday. I'm sorry. They, of course, were impacted by Hurricane Helene, which our thoughts and prayers out to everybody out there. Of course, the folks, up and down the southern United States, especially here in North Carolina, Asheville, and probably about about an hour and a half away. And so thoughts and prayers out to them. And so that impacted a lot of games. But we had Tuskegee come away with a win against Edward Waters. I'm not sure if they're off the ledge yet, but hey, I'm sure they were happy for a win.
Tuskegee, yeah.
Yeah.
But let me just say something though. Like when you're Edward Waters and you give up 158 yards of penalties, 7 first downs due to penalties, that is a lot to overcome. And man, the way that Tuskegee kind of sort of battled back and scored 24 unanswered to put that game away, yeah, I mean that's a big deal because because Tuskegee has so many question marks. But I did like the fact that they gave Bill opportunity to kind of run the offense a little bit more, and that really stands out. Go ahead and try to see if you could settle on one quarterback and develop around them, and they did that, and they kind of went to the run game some as well. But man, if you're Edward Waters, you can't just anytime I see a team that has a lot of penalties like that, a lot of times that tells you that they're probably struggling with that opponent, and they're probably getting out physical by that opponent. And 158 penalties. That's pretty atrocious, honestly. That's bad.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And are you guys having trouble hearing me? Am I good? Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're fine.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, I see Matt had said something there. Okay. Now we did have another question too about Clark Atlanta. Before we leave on them, it says if CAU goes undefeated, and right now they still are, they have not lost a game. Will they get a high seed in Region Two? Well, Chris, I know in the play, in the, in D2 we don't have auto bids, so we do need to put that out there. Do you think they will get into playoffs if they go undefeated? And if they do, I mean, what kind of seed theoretically are we looking at here?
Well, it's just really early to talk about playoffs still. I mean, you
Playoffs?
need another couple of weeks. You need a couple more weeks at least to get to that point. Um, the one thing I will say though is that um, like you got other schools to kind of worry about that are probably going to have a leg up. Let's say you have a one loss team from the CIAA against the SIAC, those out of conference games are probably going to matter there. Um, in addition to that, like the Go South is in a situation now where there are some games that would have helped to knock out some of those undefeated teams, and they're not there now. I'm thinking about Valdosta, West Alabama. They didn't play, so that's potentially two undefeated teams that could run the table now, and so you can end up with easily four undefeated teams at a minimum, and a one loss team in any of those other leagues could leapfrog at Clark Atlanta because of the fact that how bad the conference played out of conference this year. So, it wouldn't surprise me if they everything else being equal that they ended up in a 4 or 5 seed. You would think that because you're undefeated, maybe you get a home game and that would put you at a 4 seed. But I also don't be surprised if they're undefeated and they have to go on the road, in the playoffs if that situation
Maybe to a
pans out.
CIAA school?
Well, it's very possible. It's so possible. I mean, yeah, the one thing, the saving grace is the South Atlantic's kind of beating up on themselves. That does help, but still, it's it's a lot to play right now. That can Clark go unscathed is question number one. Um, and I'm not sure if they lose 2 games that they will make it into the playoffs this year. That's the problem. I mean, you probably have to rely on earned access to get in. So yeah, it's just so many scenarios to think about. It's just a lot to work through. But yeah, it's high seed. I don't see like super high seed. It's not gonna be like Benedict. It's not gonna be that.
Yeah. Well, I think that's gonna be the word for the rest of the year. Is gonna be scenarios, right? We've got hella scenarios as we get into CIAA as well too. So we'll keep an eye on those. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. Please make sure you guys are hitting the like button wherever you are and leave us a comment. Shout out to everybody who's commenting in chat. Blue Jacket for Life, always there. Matt, we appreciate you for hopping on as well. Walter there as well. Okay, look at it. Look at us, Chris. We found us a Golden Bull fan.
Ooh.
Ooh. Well, there we go. It's about Ram time. Yeah, no, it's that's great. Now, seriously, we had coach on the show a couple weeks ago, And so it's great for them, to finally get a football fan base after 132 years. So there's that. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm just going to, but I'm sorry. I did not do it. All right. All right. So let's a couple other SIAC schools. Albany State, they took care of business against Kentucky State. I mean, they beat them like you're supposed to beat Kentucky State. Again, as we're talking about playoffs, and again, what do you think? What are you feeling like their chances are? Obviously we saw in the non-conference they got split at it by Valdosta State, and then they lost to Shaw, who got split at it by Virginia Union.
Yeah.
I mean, if we were to get a CA at this point, if we were to get if both those teams were on the table, because I'm not sure if they play each other. And I'd have to, I'm not sure if they play each other. They don't play each other. So they could run the table, play each other, and then the winner is your probably your best bet for the SIC championship. Any hope for them? I don't think there's any thoughts of being a high seed for sure, but any hope for them? I guess that they have to kind of dominate and show that they are basically the class of the SIC to even have a chance to do that.
Well, yeah, I would say that, yeah, they would have to not just dominate, but they also have Fort Valley that they've got to get over, that Clark's already dealt with week 0. So that's a real issue. Like, that's a real question. If they get past Fort Valley, get into the championship game, yeah, I could see the championship game winner finding a way to get in. But let's not forget that there have been precedents set that a conference can have such bad performances that they missed all the playoffs altogether. So, I mean,
yeah, and I want people, and that's why it was great that while we're talking about this now, I want people to be prepared for that, because maybe Chris, maybe it comes down to how good how good Fort Valley State does. Maybe Fort Valley State has to really show themselves to be a cut above everybody else in the SIC, and it's like, well, hey, both these teams beat that team, and that's their best win. We'll have to see. But yeah, nonetheless, we will also be amiss if we didn't point out Morehouse and Benedict just for the rarity of the score, 21-5. Morehouse coming off a win, they score 5 points. And special teams were a theme of the day because we also start to flip over to the CIAA again. Every game this weekend counted. Lincoln and Livingstone. Chris, explain this one to me like a 5-year-old. How do we get to a 15-14 Livingstone win? Explain this one to me.
Oh gosh, you had 3 field goals by Jason Savata for Livingstone, and then they scored a touchdown. And if I remember correctly, they tried to go for 2, they didn't get it. On the other side, you had Lincoln. They got 2 good touchdowns. Man, now at the end of that game, I was like, man, I really want to pick Lincoln in this game. I'm tempted to pick them. And I made a mistake in my column because I had already put them at 0-4, thinking that they already played 4 games and they hadn't. So they called me out for it. And then they had a freshman snapper, long snapper, a freshman holder, and a freshman kicker at the end of the game. Teed it up perfectly for a game-winning field goal, and they screwed up the snap. And man, it was just a very somber way to go out. But I tell you one thing, when it comes to special teams and kickers right now, like the CIAA has some really good kickers in the conference. And if you don't have a good kicker, it over the years has come back to bite you, Virginia State. But this year in particular, it's really showing up that like the coaching is done really well, teeing it up, and if you can't like make that last minute field goal, like that's the difference between, it's really truly the difference between winning by 1 and going home with nothing.
Hey man, Hey man, the MEAC's hungry, man. The MEAC is hungry. They want
We'll
something.
we'll take anybody. Stop taking the CIAA teams. Take somebody else.
Hey, yeah, there is that. We are kind of like tired of, we kind of are over them coming over to this, coming back to their roots to keep picking fruit. Um, you know,
This is not relegation like we're in like European soccer. Go somewhere else.
yeah. So Livingstone 3-2. They have the fortune, just like the schools in. I think they along with the Virginia schools were the big winners on of the CIAA games that didn't count. So there's that. They are 1-0 in the conference. That loss to Bowie State never happened, and I know some of our Bowie State friends thought they still had to win. They thought they were 1-1 leaving Winston State. No, you're 0-1. It's hey man, it's like that sometimes. It is like that sometimes. All right. John says it's going to be some games that's not going to count. The CIAA ranking some of these Saturday to pick on what team pick and which game's not going to count. So again, we talked about it last week, but we were kind of the first ones to pull it out there. Every game. So starting last week, everything counted, but the previous week, the Southern Division's wins did not count. I'm sorry.
The North, the former North.
The former North wins and losses did not count. Now Livingstone is still 1-0 because they changed it.
Livingstone is 1-1 in conference.
So Livingstone was assigned a loss, but Bowie State did not get a win.
Right,
because
correct.
We did the screenshot last week, and then by Friday it changed again. So Livingstone is 1-1.
Yes,
they are 1-1 in the set.
The big thing to remember is it's like the last 7 games on the schedule is the one that are going to count for the conference, and it's going to be really interesting because what happens if you have tiebreakers and you can't count the game against the opponent as a tiebreaker because that game didn't count for one of them. So that's going to be really interesting. And also remember, like the CIAA didn't design this as a long-term solution. This was a very last-minute deal because St. Aug wasn't going to field a football team like in the spring. They decided not to do that because of their issues. So they came up with something. Schools tried to fill their schedule. Some of them got it filled. Some of it didn't. I think like Fayetteville State's only playing
and Livingstone.
Yeah, they couldn't fill it towards the end. So some teams have really 2 bye weeks. They had week 0 they didn't play, and then they're going to have another bye week in the middle of the season. So it's kind of an unfortunate situation. I don't think that this is a long-term deal. It's just something we have to suffer through this season.
Yeah, and as we continue to go through what happened last week, looking forward to this week. Again, appreciate everybody for tuning in to the D2 HBCU Game Day Football Show. Fayetteville State went up to Virginia State feeling good after, win over Elizabeth City State. That counted for Fayetteville State. Didn't count for Elizabeth City State, right, Chris?
Right, correct.
Yeah. So they go up to Virginia State, who was coming off of a loss to Winston-Salem State. You kind of like, what are we looking here? And Virginia State, whatever, they look like a totally different team against Fayetteville State. Chris, does that say more about where Virginia State is, or does it say more about where Fayetteville State is at this point?
Oh man, you baiting me now into a hornet's nest. Oh gosh, let me just say something here, okay? You watch some of these other schools sort of build their rosters, make adjustments, and things like that. And when you look at Fayetteville State's roster, it almost feels like they kind of just they're kind of a little stagnant. It feels like it's not that they're a bad team. There'll be seasons where they couldn't get a out of conference win against a non HBCU. They got that against Pembroke this year. You know, and they I mean they got a what they got a winning no they're tied, they're 2-2, right? Not a bad record, but it just feels like some of the other schools have just sort of taken that next step, and so Fayetteville State can't play for just to beat the South anymore, and even beating the South this year is not definitely not a sure bet. I mean, when you look at Johnson C. Smith, when you look at where Winston State is, even Shaw, still got plenty to contend for, and Livingstone has, a decent defense. So, I mean, it just feels like they're just getting passed by, and I certainly put a little bit more stock into Fayetteville State. Has me going back to the drawing board, thinking a little bit more about where are they going the second half of the year. Now, I could eat my words, back half of the conference, but I don't think so. I don't think so.
Right. Well, yeah, so much to play for, so much still to talk about. Even again in last week, as we continue to dig into last week, a lot went on. As we talked about the split at Shaw over VUU. Shaw comes in 3-1. Lost to Catawba, but in that game they still played well offensively. And then Chris, they went up. They crossed the border into Virginia, and things fell apart. Or was this a case of VUU waking up after getting smacked by Johnson C. Smith?
Well, I just feel like this is the beginning story. This is VUU's villain story beginning after that game, and I'm just like, man, like yeah, I could see something where VUU's gonna come out storming, and that's exactly what they did. Now, did I think they were gonna score 35 points like that? And Shaw was still in the zero? I didn't think so, but they played as I thought it would play. I don't think Shaw quite has the depth to match where VUU is in the trenches, and that makes a big difference. And Virginia Union just wore them down over time. That doesn't mean that Shaw doesn't have the players to play, but when they got behind big, it was almost like like trying to play, like Coach Jones said in his weekly press conference. They got down big against Albany, and you're trying to recreate that magic, and that can be hard to do. And VU is a stronger opponent in this case, and so this is what you got. Shaw kind of going back to the drawing board, and do they have their VUU moment against Bluefield this week?
Well, if ever there was a time to have it, it is against Bluefield. And we'll engage the chat a little bit. My good friend Lennon Blow over here, slumming with us over at Norfolk State, slumming with us over at D2 ball.
Come on home.
Nah, shout out to y'all. Y'all do have a couple wins. You did beat V State. We do have that in common. We both beat Virginia State. Shout out to you for joining the show. We shall see. Maybe, I know you're probably trying to ship Coach Odoms down to the CIAA, but you guys gotta roll with him for a little bit longer. At least you gotta roll with him for a little bit longer. And much love to Coach Odoms. I always enjoy him. So yeah, split at it ensued. Smacked by Smith. Yes, I'll tell you why I said smacked by Smith, because it wasn't so much in the score, but just in the physicality of the game. Union is used to smacking everybody around. They do it in football. Lord knows they let them do it in basketball long enough. Like they're the Detroit Pistons sometimes. But I think they
see what you did there.
They definitely. I would say that being at that game, I would say physically they matched up for man, and Virginia Union's not used to that in recent times. So I'm gonna have to stand on that. They got smacked. The score didn't say it, but it was there. So and then we had another game here. Another former. It's not necessarily a crossover anymore, but we had Winston-Salem State taking on Bowie State. I know you and I talked about this game last week, Chris. I know we caught some flack. Let's see. I know we caught some flack And I know we caught some flack from our good friend Clarence over there at Bowie State. Order was going to be restored, all these things. I'm not going to pull up all the tweets. I do have them as screenshots, but I'm not going to pull up all.
Pull up the receipts.
You know what, Chris? I just might need to pull up the receipts. Based off what we saw the other day over in in Winston-Salem. Let's see. Do we have a couple that we can share with you guys? But again, in the chat, please keep it going. Let's see. Is this one?
I was just gonna say real quick, we did show him some very good hospitality, though. He did. He was fed.
Yeah. Yeah. Shout out to my guy Corey Williams. The man always takes care of everybody, including one of the guys who's rapidly moving up on the WSSU Haters Ball playlist. And that is my guy Clarence. See this. All right, so we'll go to the highlights and then we'll come back to some of these because we want to make sure we give Clarence his. We're going to make sure we give him.
Daly looking, this time puts it up and throws it down. It's caught at the 40-yard line and down. Oh my goodness, what a catch.
Yep, that ball hit everybody that was involved in the play. And our receiver.
Clarence, you just, look, we appreciate him because we do need more fan bases in the CIAA that are more engaged. But Clarence, see, this is what happens, Clarence. Let me make sure I clear that up. Clarence, now I want you to remind. So this happened the week before. As soon as Winston-Salem State beat VSU, at this point, Bowie State was up maybe 14-0 on Livingstone before they allowed them to come back, before they won the game. And he was already guaranteeing win number 2 before they got win number 1. Let's see here. A couple more things. What else did we get? Let's see. We also had.
Let me just say one thing while you're doing that. So the score was 28-14, right? It wasn't really that close. That 7 points was in garbage time. The game's already settled.
Straight garbage.
And then the one thing that was really shocking was just how you had multiple plays where Bowie State just had blown coverage in secondary, and you just had these long pass plays, and one of them should have been a touchdown, but the wide receiver dropped the ball. Probably was thinking about scoring and forgot about catching the ball. So he did redeem himself later, but nonetheless, this game it looked close in the first quarter. When Bowie State, had something going on with the run game. But, things got dire really quickly. For whatever reason, they were shuffling quarterbacks. They played 3 quarterbacks in this game. And you could just tell that they really just didn't have an answer for what Winston State was throwing at them. So, Bowie State's got a lot to figure out. It don't get any easier having to go to Fayetteville State, who's got
back-to-back trips to North Carolina.
Yeah, so if you're Bowie State, man, you got some things you really got to figure out. And really you're trying to build for next year at this point, with so many teams ahead of them in the race. But at least can you finish the season with a winning record becomes the question at this point. And I'm not so sure they're going to get there.
Yeah, tough sledding for Bowie. Again, I felt like WSSU was the better team. And it showed. Dalen Lee had a really solid game that could have been a great game if some of his receivers didn't drop the ball. 13 for 25, 188 yards, solid, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, solid numbers. But there was a wide open touchdown that was dropped there. He could have easily been 17. He could have easily been 17 or 18 for 25, 300 yards. So I think one of the things that we saw against Winston is we've seen them. We know that they can run the ball. We were waiting on Dalen Lee to kind of see if he could regrab some of that magic he had last year as a freshman. He looked a little bit more like that as he's getting more comfortable with his receivers. And so I don't know, Chris, right now, it looks like to me the two most varied offenses in the CIAA, Johnson C. Smith went up to Bluefield. Well, they didn't go to Bluefield. They went to Salem, where the CIAA championship will be held. Maybe trying to get a little practice run for the CIAA championship.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
I see what y'all are putting down over there at Beatty's Ford Road. I see what y'all are doing. It's it was a chance for them to play. They played Bluefield State, and they did what you're supposed to do against Bluefield State. They dominated 42-6. Similar score to the one we saw with Winston. They scored another, 8 points, and they gave up another 3 points. And I think that just kind of tells me what my eyes have seen that, depending on how these next couple weeks go, you can't overlook anything. It looks like for once that Johnson C. Smith, Winston-Salem State game is really going to have some big-time implications.
Let me just mention one thing about that game. I don't know if people realize this, but JCSU did not play their two leading running backs in that game on Saturday. I only know that because of my fantasy team got impacted by this. So I was like, well, where's Crouch? Like, what? And I still won barely, but I had a bad week. Nonetheless, I was like, what's going on? And he did come in to block one play, and that was it. Mm-hmm. So they played Avante George, who was at St. Aug last year. He rushed for over 100 yards against Bluefield, which is pretty solid to have a third string running back rushing like that. So, yeah, I just want to put that note out there that they didn't even play. They weren't even at full strength, and you see what they did.
Yeah, man. I think to me, I know this is not going to sound great on Oakwood Drive. I think it is, but I think the St. Aug not having a football program just made the CIAA South that much more dangerous. Yes, we got Eric Sanders that says shout out to Isaiah Knowles. Albany State threw for 6 touchdowns and ran for another total 7 touchdowns, responsible for Kentucky State. Look, man, hey, shout out to Mr. Knowles. That's a stat game right now. Kentucky State has a lot of things that they have to pin down. And so, kudos to that young man. I know Mr. Wright's getting all the attention right now, but shout out to him for the way he played. Got some more notes in here. WSSU could have done it worse. Wide receiver missed more than a few. Trust me, I was there. I agree. We got a couple yeps and laughs. We got Mr. Hill there. Okay, I see why you're a Johnson C. Smith. Is this the player or the father of the player? Let me know in the chat. But yeah, shout out to you guys. I mean, straight up split at. Let's see. All right. So that was week 4, kind of 5. And as we head into the new week, we let's look at what we got coming up. So we'll start back in the SIAC, Chris. First, we have Savannah State and Clark Atlanta. So, Clark Atlanta. We know they have a dynamic offense. But, their defense has definitely given teams it's interesting. Savannah State only scores 8.25 points a game, Chris. What? How many do you have them getting against that not vaunted Clark Atlanta defense?
Well, they might get to 21. I mean, that's what it took for them to, beat Tuskegee was 20. And so we know that they're capable of getting something. They're just another team that got some things they got to figure out at that quarterback spot in particular. The offense isn't that dynamic, but given that Clark's defense is rather suspect, I could see them hanging in this game for a little bit until Clark wakes up. So, if you're Clark, you just can't look down on this opponent. You got to come out there and you just got to just go ahead and handle your business early. David Wright shouldn't be playing the entire game in these games. He shouldn't be throwing for 42 passes in games like this. He should be, get him in, get your points, get off the field. And anything less than that to me is a disappointment.
Yeah, well, Savannah State gives up 254 yards per game against the pass. David Wright comes in with just under 1,600 yards for the season into this game, and again, he's missed he's missed a half of football. I don't know, Chris. I think this smells like he might get to sounds like he might get to 2,000 yards passing this year in this game for me.
I don't know about that. Savannah State's defense is pretty good. Their defense is gonna pose some challenges, that's for sure. So I don't know if he'll get that high, but he will get numbers. He will get numbers.
All right, and somebody's got to get a win number 2 bowl, also known as the Morehouse Tuskegee Classic. Both teams are sitting here with 1 win through their first couple of games. Morehouse has played 1 more game than Tuskegee. We're looking at a Morehouse team that scored 5 points last week. Chris, what are your thoughts on this game? Does Tuskegee get a little bit closer to 500 here, or do we still have to respect Morehouse that we know they can at least beat somebody before that's not named Clark Atlanta?
Well, I know we joke around about Morehouse a lot, but I think Morehouse may have a little bit more offense than what Tuskegee's bringing to the table right now. This could turn into like what happened with, when they played Kentucky State. So I wouldn't necessarily write them off just yet. I wouldn't do that just yet.
Okay. We shall see. So, I did put the stats through AI, and 24-20 Morehouse is the prediction that we got. I'm sorry, Tuskegee. So should be close. Albany State, they are, again, looking to build off last week. They're taking on Allen, who is, not Allen of last year, but they're not Kentucky State either. You look at that defense, which is led by Keenis Boulware, who is the former defensive coordinator at so many CIAA schools that have won championships, also the former head coach at Winston-Salem State. They've allowed 23 points a game and over 300 yards per game, struggling with the pass. My God, they've got their work cut out for them, and it looks like Albany State, may be revved up now. It looks like Albany State may be revved up. Knowles, who we talked about before, he's just under 1,000 yards passing. And not only is he throwing for the touchdowns, but he's also got a really good completion percentage, 72%. And so it's definitely it is definitely a situation where, this could be interesting. Let's see. Morehouse Tuskegee. He's Sly's calling the game, and he talked to his agent. Not a pushover, but a scheme that can be beat by a high caliber throwing attack. Revenge game, flasher for homecoming. He's over Allen. Of course, this is a completely new Allen team, but hey, when you're motivating your players, who the hell cares? For all they know, Teddy Keaton and Wright are running out that door. So yeah, he's throwing precisely. Albany State's averaging 31.5 a game. Again, they had that loss to Shaw. They got that split out against Valdosta State, but other than that, they've been coming around. And then we will go back over to the CIAA. This wasn't on our docket, but Chris, I do want to acknowledge it. Livingstone hosting. Yes, they have another home game hosting Elizabeth City State this week. Livingstone is 3-2 quietly. And let's see. All right. Let's see what my camera's doing here. I've gone faceless. Let's see.
It's all right. You got me.
Yes, the only face that we need.
You disappeared because it's just that kind of game. Like, we didn't want. They didn't want. You don't want them to see your face. Talk about this game. Elizabeth City and Livingstone. This is a pretty even matchup, I would say. And Livingstone's got a pretty good defense. Elizabeth City likes to keep a game low scoring as well. I don't know if Elizabeth City is going to have enough offense. That's always been this huge question mark. And then they kind of surprised me in that. The running back for Livingstone, Muhammad, he's been pretty good for the Blue Bears. He's been averaging over 100 yards rushing a game. And so, if you haven't really seen what they kind of do in the run game, it's certainly a little bit intriguing, I would say. I think in the end, Livingstone's probably going to win this game. It is a home game. That does help. But I think they have a little bit more to work with on offense. And they definitely have the edge in special teams. So if that game's close, Zapata is definitely going to be the one to take them over the edge for the win. So that's going to make that one really, really interesting too.
Yeah, as I'm back. I did not
Welcome.
get swept away. Welcome back. Yeah, it's going to be really interesting. Livingstone 3-2. They get this win. They're 4-2 for the first time since 2014. And so quite so a lot to play for them. They will, and again, in that CIAA South, they're the team that everybody's going to have to play. No matter what happens this week with WSSU and Smith, they're going to have to play and potentially be that equalizer that you can't sleep on, despite whoever we think is the best in the CIAA cannot sleep. What do you always say, Chris?
Can't sleep on them. They'll make you pay.
Yeah, and so we will go to our next game. We will look at Bowie State and Fayetteville State. These are two teams who are used to being at or near the top of the conference. Of course, it seemed like they met in the CIAA championship game forever, for eternity in perpetuity, for so long. It's been Fayetteville State made it back last year. Bowie State did not, but they meet again on Saturday in Fayetteville. Another long bus ride straight down 95 this time for Bowie State. Chris, what do you make of this game? Musical chairs at quarterback for Bowie State, kind of Fayetteville State, and we might see 6 quarterbacks in this game, man.
Yeah, I would say the over/under for number of quarterbacks that play in this game that take a snap is 5. So, because Fayetteville State's been kind of playing round robin, and then they also they have Joe Owens, who likely the starter, and DeMar Daniels, and then Caden Davis is kind of like playing a little bit of everywhere on offense, and then you've got the 3 over at Bowie State, and so 5 out of those 6 I would say are probably going to take a snap, but Fayetteville State has a little bit more of an identity right now on both sides of the ball. I would say the one overlooked area for Fayetteville State is their front 7 on defense. When you got Shaw Gaskins and Sean Robinson, Kobe Merritt at the linebacker spot, like that's a lot. That's a lot to contend with, and that bunch is going to always keep them kind of in games. It's whether the offense can work enough magic to help. And so I think that's going to be the difference in between these two. So, it's a shame because Bowie State, you thought that they were going to figure some things out, but it's kind of like where Lincoln is right now, except that they have a win and Lincoln doesn't. There are a lot of hopes that just ain't panning out. So
Yeah, man, it's and again, we joke with Clarence and shout out to him, but Chris, we've seen this movie before. Like
yeah,
we've seen this movie before where, again, I know I did a story a couple weeks last week on HBCUGameDay.com. Please go check it out where I talked about HBCU dynasties, right? Those teams that are, at or near the top of the conference for, multiple years in a row. And Fayetteville State, not quite at that level because they haven't won the championship that many times. They got the one win, but similar type of situation. And then if you look at Bowie State, I think that's a classic example of you get Damon Wilson, who takes his time and builds his program, suffers those losses to Winston-Salem State back to back, and then he gets his guys. He gets his guys on the run. They go 3 in a row, something that hadn't been done in the CIAA in over 30 years. And then, he gets a call up to the, Division II rank, D1 ranks. His defensive coordinator actually got it before he did. Normally, that's what happens. You get it to your DC or your top coordinator, and they'll get it. And, you'll have a couple years where you can kind of ride what's been going on. But then eventually, that rebuild happens, and it's not fun. As my late father used to say, ain't no fun when the rabbit got the gun. And, for a long time, Bowie State was that big bully, in the CIAA North and in the CIAA period. They could just come up at the end of the season and just split on Elizabeth City State for 78, 80 points, So, and then when you start falling like that, teams and coaches, they remember that and they really want to punish you. And we shall see. Okay. All right. Well, look, you get a chance to make a statement again this week, Clarence, back in North Carolina against a wounded Bronco after last week. At the end of the day, one of these teams keeps slim hopes alive, and the other team is pretty much out of the race. They will have euthanized themselves. So we shall see. Hey. Look, man, now, when it gets really bad is when you can't even count on winning those games. Been there, done that. I'm not going to,
yeah.
We're gonna see. Hey, ECSU beat Virginia State last year. Virginia State last year was pretty good. We'll see. We shall see. Shout out to Alonzo. Appreciate you, brother, as always. All right, let's go. Yeah, just some of the numbers real quick, because since I did do this, Bowie State scored 19.5 points a game. Again, their defense is allowing 329 yards per game and 23.5 points per game. Yeah. They're allowing 141 rushing yards against them per game. For Fayetteville State, Damari Daniels, his passing numbers, I say in the beginning of the game, Bowie State, Fayetteville State's not sexy, but they win. But God, these 411 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, and 48% completion percentage. Even in the CIAA, that's going to be hard to get that done. And the Broncos have allowed 332 total yards per game. And so this could go a lot of ways, man. This could go a lot of ways. Just like I'm not even gonna go there. Okay, Johnson C. Smith taking on Virginia State. So for the second time in 3 weeks, the Golden Bulls, who are scoring 35 points per game, they're putting up 431 yards per game of total offense, coming off that split that they gave Bluefield State, and they for the second time in 3 weeks they're facing one of the Virginia schools who were picked 1 and 2 in the CIAA. They got to win against the defending champs, Virginia Union, even though the loss did not count for Virginia Union. And they're taking on a Virginia State team that found some offense last week. They're averaging 23.5 a game. But last week, quarterback Romello Williams had a big game. He got about half of his passing total 702 passing yards and 6 touchdowns. And Kevin Gales just went straight stupid against that Fayetteville State defense. What are your thoughts on these two teams right now in this part of the season? Again, Johnson C. Smith kind of seem like they're in a. They felt confident enough. I guess it was a confidence thing. I don't think it was an injury thing to not play their top 2 running backs against Bluefield State. Of course, VSU is no BSU, but there.
Well, I would like to see what VSU can do against a more potent running attack. They did shut down Fayetteville State in the run game, but that's not really Fayetteville State. Well, they don't really have a true strength, but it probably favors the pass a little bit more than the run these days. But this is a JCSU team that likes to use the run to set up the pass, and it's going to be more of like what they encountered against Wichita State, if not worse, I think. So I'm not buying that run defense just yet, having been shored up all the way. I'm not buying it for Virginia State, and that's why I think that I favor JCSU in this game just off of that alone.
And they are at home, and the Bulls at Beatty's Ford Road, a little bit different over on Beatty's Ford Road.
You go ahead and hearing the Hemis in the background. Hemis on the field.
The Hemis in the train, man. Nah, when I went to the VUU game, I appreciate everybody for tuning in. Please hit that like button and leave us a comment. Let us know who your team is and how they're doing. Yeah, when I went to the VUU game, it was so funny, Chris, because that game started at 6, and the Virginia Union band hadn't showed up through the entire first half, and then all of a sudden, so let's see. All right, hold on. I'm gonna switch up my. Let's see. We're gonna have to go cam here. Let's see. All right, so yeah, Virginia State was not able to. Virginia Union's band rolls in at the same time, Chris, no lie, that a train actually comes through Beatty's Ford Road, and someone made the joke that they hopped off the train. And then as they were leaving in the as they were leaving at the end of the game, the train left too. So that was it was fun times on Beatty's Ford Road. Yeah, Chris, as we continue to go on, I think this is a game, both this interesting too, both Johnson C. Smith and Virginia State, both their defensive coordinators, both played together at Winston-Salem State University. So a little interesting matchup there. As we look forward to that game. Shout out to Carlos Fields and Barry Tripp, who were on those NCAA championship teams. And as we get ready to round things out, we've got Virginia Union taking on Winston-Salem State University. This is a game that has got actually a lot of significance historically in the CIAA. Starting back in the 70s when WSSU really got a football program. Virginia Union was kind of one of their nemesis. They used to battle for recruiting and recruits. And right now, the series is tied between these two teams, 23-1. So, when you think of rivals and you think of these two squads, you don't necessarily think of each other, but they have had fierce rivalries. They have met in CIAA championship games before. And so, both of these programs looking to, really make their claim that they are the contenders as well. Chris, this is definitely a game where that I don't think maybe a lot of people heading into the season saw as being a cornerstone game of the season, but definitely it looks like that going into the season. Into this week.
Oh yeah, most definitely. I kind of looked at Virginia State and Winston-Salem State as having the two toughest conference schedules, and it's just ratcheted up even more with the way JCSU has been playing and some of the other schools too. Ooh, man, there's just a lot to dissect with this game, especially can you contain buyers? Mark Wright had a great game y'all gonna stop slandering Mark Wright out there for Virginia Union. He had an excellent game, and can he continue that? And especially against that secondary, I think Winston State's got an interception in like almost every game this year now,
Yeah, they do.
and
They got one against. They had a pick six against Bluefield State. They had one against. They had one against A&T. They had
oh
Fleming had another one against ODU. I did they get?
yep,
Did they get one against VSU?
yes,
Okay, got one against
uh,
VSU, and then they've got several last week. So yeah, that their defensive backfield has been a strength for them. And we'll hear a little bit from Coach Robert Massey, and then come back and talk a little bit about that game.
Well, it's a good feeling. For me, first time being here in this seat, where we do have that balance, offense and defense. Obviously, hats off to my coordinators, Coach Reese and Coach Mack, for that, as well as the rest of the staff. But again, and I'll echo what this gentleman said. We have to stay level-headed about everything. We're excited, but then we're giddy, we're happy. But we know, again, it's a long road, and we take it one game at a time. As a coach, you will look down the line to see who you got and see how they're playing a little bit. But we have to stay in the moment. And the moment is Virginia Union. Stay focused on that. Climb that hill first, and then let the other things fall. Because, again, you talk about the four teams. Well, we're playing against each other this week. So some stuff is going to kind of clear it out and make it a little more clearer in terms of the direction of who will have the opportunity. Now, you ask me, I'm going to tell you it's us. And I'm pretty sure if you ask any of those coaches, they're going to tell you it's them. So what we have to do is what we've been doing up to this point, making sure our kids are prepared, making sure obviously the coaches are prepared, and we practice scenarios and situations. So when they get in those type deals, and then they learn from a year ago. Again, last year we lost 4 games by 15 points. We were on that end. This year we're winning those games, those close games. And I think that's the making of a championship team, being able to win on the road, being able to win close games. So we're building character for football, if you will. So again, that's a big part of it. And I think, right now, I feel good about it. And of course, those guys do as well.
Yeah, no doubt, Chris. As we come to the end of the show, I'll make sure that we get back on before my camera goes out again. We look at the numbers. Again, I think it was talked about Jada Byers. He had a great game against Shaw. Did not have a Jada Byers-like game against Virginia, against Johnson C. Smith. And to me, I think that the defense that they're going to see on Saturday is a lot more similar to the one at Johnson C. Smith than the one against Shaw. Let's just be honest. Obviously, Jada Byers, we know what he's done through his career. He's probably going to end up as the second leading rusher in CIAA history behind Richard Huntley. But yeah, there's so many intricate things here. I think you talk about that passing game of Virginia Union. How is that going to show up? Is Virginia Union going to be able to get to Dalen Lee? I think that might be a big key. Dalen Lee has only been sacked twice this year already. That's twice in 5 games. That's pretty good. No matter what level you're on, to only be sacked twice.
yeah, I agree.
And then also the receivers there for WSSU. It'll definitely be an interesting game. VU won last week with Byers and their QB having a good game. Yeah, no doubt about it. Jay says different opponent. WSSU more comparable to JCSU in terms of athleticism on defense. I think all of those are going to be interesting. The game's still in Richmond, though. Still a home field advantage. So the Rams still have a lot to prove. I know they're a little bit banged up as well. They lost Noah Marshall to in the Virginia State game for a couple games. He is supposed to be back soon, but I'm not sure if he's going to be playing this week. So I think both teams have strong running games. Obviously Virginia Union, and then we know what WSSU has done this year. I think the quarterback play is definitely going to be the key to me, Chris. Which quarterback and receivers can make some plays and make you not have to load up on that box.
Yeah. Well, the one thing I'm really looking forward to is that Winston-Salem State offensive line against that vaunted defensive line for Virginia Union. You got Isaac Anderson on there, Mike Jones on there. You got a number of guys. Toure, I believe, is on there. You got all these guys who can sort of break loose and make things very challenging. And do they make Winston State one-dimensional? Because then you've got to win the game on the strength of Dalen Lee's arm, and we haven't had to see that so far. So I'm just really curious to see kind of what that defensive game plan for Virginia Union is going to be. And then, the same way, other way around. I think that, can Winston contain Byers and Curtis Allen, and put that ball in Bart Wright's hand as well. So two very similar styles. They both want to be balanced in the way they approach the game, and I think that really is going to make this one particularly interesting. And Winston State, they want to win this game. They're going to have to do it in very hostile territory.
Yeah, I think the last time they went up there to Virginia Union, somebody tried to stomp on my phone. So there's that. As there was some action going on there. So different cast of characters there, though. Dr. Parker's running a really clean program. Shout out to him. Shout out to Coach Massey and his guys as well. I think this is definitely a game that we're going to look back in as one of the defining ones of the season. Also, the turnover battle is going to be key too. WSSU's been great at forcing turnovers. If Virginia Union can, not turn the ball over, that definitely helps. That would definitely help them and get the cushion. But if they get to turning that ball over, they've shown that they can capitalize off of it. So a great week of football behind us, a great week ahead of us. And I see breaking down the Bulldogs. Y'all CIAA North teams. Y'all are so cute. Y'all are so cute. Like, y'all fake like y'all hate each other. And then you're like, well, the North this, the North that. Man, it ain't like that down here in North Carolina. We don't do that. Look, man, it ain't no CIAA South unity and nothing like that. It's WSSU versus everybody. It's Beatties-Ford versus all of y'all, and all of that stuff. It's different around here. So y'all are so cute to CIAA North. I love it. Yeah, just keep it going. Anyway, shout out to y'all.
Simon Bell.
My man, so look, man, you cannot. Oh my God, my man. This is what happened, guys, with my man. So, yeah, Simon Bell. We're gonna have to. That's definitely gonna be the thumbnail. All right, guys. Before my camera goes out again, I appreciate everybody for tuning in. We had a great crowd tonight. Please make sure that you guys will go ahead and hit the like button and share this afterwards. And for sure, and we'll catch you guys on the next one because they will go all night. We're going to catch you guys later. Watch some D2 football. Enjoy it. Share it. Peace.